communications for the Barcolana race. Richard Moore, we know him from yesterday, CEO of Alta Agency. Webb, CEO of 1080 Media and Chairman of the Yachting Journalists Association. And we've just heard about the work of the Mallory Group with World Sailing and the Parabid, Emily Caroe. So please all come up to the stage. Thank you. Nick, I'm going to start with you. So you made quite a trip to come over here. Where are you from and why are you here?
I'm from Australia, so I might be the furthest travelled, I'm not sure. It's a long way from down under, but it's really nice to escape after a few years locked down there. So, but I'm here, I think, because my business essentially started based in social media and in the blog space as a young athlete looking to try and give back to the sport and trying to attract more people to it that were similar to me, but not necessarily in love with sailing yet.
Okay. Now, Francesca, I had the pleasure of working for you at the Barcolana race along with Shirley Robertson and Alec Wilkinson, and it is quite a spectacle. We had a low turnout of 1,616 boats on one start line this year. We try and get more than 2,000, don't we? But a 1.8 nautical mile start line for a race that's only 11 nautical miles long. Ian Walker said yesterday that when you, as soon as you get into racing, you start to lose people at a younger age. Anyway, it seems to me that the Barcolana race is more a festival than a race. Is that fair to say?
Thank you so much. Good morning to everyone. We have this question every year. Just we say to us, what are we? Are we a regatta? Are we a festival? Are we in the tourist industry? Are we in the sailing industry? I think we don't have the real answer, because for that 100 boat that comes to Barcolana to win the race and invest a lot of money to win the race, for them we are a race. For the other people who comes just to enjoy and participate and be part of Barcolana, we are a big festival. So, let's say so and so.
Well, how you communicate that race we will come to in a moment. I think maybe we'll start with Richard. Just come back to what you said yesterday about communicating with Gen Alpha. Is that what it's called? People born 2010 onwards. It's a good thing to think about, but how much should we be led by the 12-year-olds?
Well, they're the future, so that kind of helps.
Won't they be different individuals by the time they're 22 or 32?
Yeah, potentially, but we've got to help shape the future. I think David's presentation was fantastic in terms of governing and directing the sport. From a comms perspective, we've got to take a lead somewhere. I just don't think that, there's a couple of things that jump to mind in my view that the sport needs some focus on. Human brand is a piece that needs to be looked at. How many heroes do we have that are instantly recognisable on the high street? I think that's something that needs some real focus. And it's not just about which media platforms we use, it's about taking people on that full user journey. What's the user experience at every stage of the process, and are we meeting them with the correct content in places that they want to be? So they're two big chunky topics. That whole human brand piece, I think, needs some real consideration, and the whole user journey, which includes social media, which includes traditional media, broadcast, and all other areas of the comms spectrum.
Emily, in your role with the Mallory Group, part of what you have to do is build the profile of sailors. I think you've got something to say about athlete voice.
Well, it's an ongoing challenge, athlete voices with sailors, and as Richard just said there, because we heard about it yesterday. Who are we as sailors? We are white, middle class, middle aged, don't really want to speak up. It's a gentleman's sport, isn't it? You know, we might fight on the water, but shoreside we're all best of friends. Nobody, you're deemed to have an air of arrogance if you speak up and if you really stand for something or say something controversial. And I think that's a real challenge we've got in our sport. And trying to encourage athletes to have a voice, whether it's something they feel passionate about, whether it's sustainability or diversity, or to just say something really bold about what happens on the water, that they don't like racing against that person because they think that they're dangerous and they did a wrong move. I mean, you look at other sports, look at what's happening in Formula One, for example, how the press conferences work, there's tension. It's not trying to make it artificial, but it's trying to make it exciting and human, which is such an important word. And that's one of my greatest challenges with the athletes I work with and the clients I work with, to say, we don't all have to be best of friends, and let's create some voice, a bit of passion, a bit of oomph.
Can I jump in there? I think that's a really, really important point. We talk about storytelling, we talk about narrative. Who are the heroes and villains in our sport? You know, what is the narrative? I think Christian Horner sums it up beautifully when he talks about Formula One as being entertainment. You know, entertainment doesn't finish behind a safety car. You know, you need that narrative. You need that interplay between humans. And again, don't forget, 78% of all media coverage is focused on human beings. You know, we're social people. People want to hear about other people, so you can't separate human brand and communication. For me, the two are totally and utterly linked.
But we've been saying this for years,
Totally.
which is all about the people. It's all about the storytelling, you know. And it's exactly what you were saying there, Emily. You know, of course it is. You know, it is the major focus of our sport in that sense. So there's the technology side as well, but it's the people. And we've been. I remember coming to, I don't know where it was, Portugal, about 10 years ago. And we were saying then we've got to build personalities, and we're still saying it. You know, where are we?
Well, there was a great piece of research, wasn't there? A poll asked people to name famous sailors, and I think there was three. The top three were Sir Ben Ainsley. I think it was Sir Ben Ainsley, Dennis Conner, and Popeye. they ran out of people to name.
Yeah, and I think in Australia as well, when people ask you what you do, and I say, I run a sailing media business, and the first question is, have you done Rolex Sydney Hobart? And where were you when we won the America's Cup? And John Bertrand is still recognised as such a great hero, and he's a good friend and mentor. But I mean, my business essentially, I was still working full-time in agency communications and didn't make it to the Olympics in 2012, and I started a podcast in 2012, way too early, but you know, but it was literally just interviewing Australian sailors to try and make that character happen, because characters are everything, and I think we spent a lot of yesterday talking about what is it that brings us all to this room, and it's the family, the personalities, not only the wins, but also the losses. And I think as a sport, the trend there as well that we're seeing outside is that we want to celebrate wins, but we also want to know about the struggles and how hard it was for them to get there, because that's what we attach to as humans. We don't all win, I think, is important too.
Sorry, Emily, I'll come back to you in a moment.
Sorry.
Francesca, I've got a question for you. We had an interesting scenario at the end of the Barcolana, which I'd already flown out by the time I knew about it, but there was a bit of sort of verbal fisticuffs between two of the maxis, and someone ended up throwing a glass of beer over somebody else, and there was a Rule 69 protest. Is that a marketing problem? Is that a communication problem, or is that an opportunity?
No, I mean, let me say just one thing before about the storytelling. What we do is a kind of different. We give the word to the normal people in sailing. I was here yesterday listening, all of you say storytelling. We give the microphone, we give the pros to the normal people that sail in our regatta, and we see a completely different story. What we see is people that loves sailing, loves the athletes, of course. As you saw in Trieste, we have the buses on the city with the face of the sailors. We celebrate them in all this way, and I think this is a kind of storytelling. If you want young people, if you want people to love sailing, They have to speak, first of all. And then, of course, when they speak, then they listen to the story of the champion, of the athletes. If you don't put them inside in the story, and they just watch, they are not the person who participates, really. This is what we try to do. This is our experience, I mean. And it worked. It worked a lot. Just to answer to your question, it's not the first time that we have some contest at the very end of the race, so the race doesn't finish at the finish line. Well, it's part of the game, and we know it. And what is fun is that the public of Barcolana, the social public of Barcolana, but the city public of Barcolana, when I go the day after to the grocery store, they ask me, who do you think is right? You know, everyone is speaking about that in the city and around, because we build this big storytelling that is not just the story of the one that wins, but it's the story of you that participate. All of you that participate. And it means a lot to people, because we have more than 2,000, let's say now we have the COVID period too. You know that we had Barcolana in the COVID, so the biggest race, the crowded race in the world said, okay, during the COVID, in the restriction period, we have the race. And we did it because we didn't want to leave people at home and said, okay, it will be difficult. It has been a lot difficult, but we did it. They came and they tell us their story. They came from far, just to say. We put a microphone on them, and they said, okay, I sail alone, because they couldn't have many people on board. And I come to the regatta just with 3, 4, 5 people, not 10 as every year, but they want to be there. And it's their story inside the big story of sailing. And also when the champions come to Barcolana, and Emily reminds very well this, when the champions come, okay, they say, it's a festival, as you say, but what a festival. We are with our people together. We are gathering with our people, because they don't meet so many times, the people, and have party together in the Saturday night.
Francesca, thank you. Emily, I interrupted you. You were going to respond to Nick.
Well, I just wanted to make the point that, of course, I'm British, and we've got three British, Italian, and Australian here, but we've got to look at France as a completely unique market when it comes to the French sailors and the characters that you've got there. You know, as most of you here will know, when you know, François Gabon won the Vendée Globe, he's on the front page of every national newspaper in the country. Oh my God, if we could import that into the UK or into the US, just how much bigger our sport would be. And I think that's we've been talking about the fragmentation of our sports. We actually have that in communications as well. You know, that France is this bubble that is like anywhere else. When I'm pitching a story about the Vendée Globe or the ocean race, I have to explain what the race is. I have to explain the fact that the boats, you know, when they'll say to me, but where do the boats stop overnight in the Southern Ocean? Well, they don't stop. They keep saying, what do you mean they keep sailing? How long's the anchor chain? It must be really long in the Southern Ocean. It's like they keep going. We have to really sell that story. Where my PR colleagues in France, they just pick up the phone and I'll say, you know, I'm calling from Massif or Mer Concept, and they say, brilliant, can I have an interview? You know, it's so different, but that's part of the fun of the game that I play.
So massive heroes in France, which we're struggling to find elsewhere. And Cliff, you said, where have we got? I would suggest that what Cyril Abiteboul said about continuity and consistency is something we need to find more of. And I think SailGP is the new opportunity. I think the consistency of SailGP is giving us something that the America's Cup has never been able to do, because the cup gets pulled from pillar to post. The momentum falls out of the cup every time it changes hands. Whereas now we, dare I suggest, they are the benign dictators of SailGP, Larry Ellison and Russell Coutts. And don't we now have an opportunity for the skippers and the other sailors on these teams to become these heroes that we need to find?
Absolutely, yeah. I was involved with, people know, but there was a changeover in the production company last year for SailGP, and I managed the first 3 of that changeover for Russell Wexley and the new incoming company. And it was really fascinating to sort of get my head under the hood there and see how it worked, managing all of that. It's, you know, you love it or you hate it, I guess. I think from a media perspective, they're throwing a lot of money at it. They're buying their airtime on TV, you know, it's getting around the world. And long may it continue until Larry's pockets give up, I guess. But
so you and I have been in media long enough to remember what old media was like and is still like, and we're still trying to make that fit as much as we can, whilst struggling to catch up with the new skills that we know that we ought to be learning as well. So what works from the old world from 20 years ago, and what do you see still working in, say, things like SailGP and the ocean race, and what's the stuff that we, if we haven't discarded it, we should have discarded by now?
I think it's very straightforward. Look at the boats for a start. I mean, they're amazing. I mean, the speeds they're doing, that actually gets people interested, of course, the whole foiling concept. And I think that's a fabulous evolution, if you like, over the last 20 years that we've seen. And that does, therefore, give you the opportunity in the platform to create the personalities. I mean, it's still a hell of a hill to climb. I mean, I was looking at it a couple of days ago. If you look at Instagram, for example, we were talking about it last night. You know, Slingsby's got 31,000 followers, and I actually wrote it down. Spithill's got 47, Ben's got 46, and Pete Burling, who is top dog as it were, 51,000. When you look at Cristiano Ronaldo, he's 501 million. A little bit of a difference. We've got a hill to climb, shall we say, in terms of building our personalities. But as we said earlier, those personalities are there. We've just got to get them encouraged to actually do something themselves as well. I mean, they've really got to get out and promote themselves. And James and I were talking about it yesterday. They are in the front line. They've got to go out and promote our sport. And it's our jobs as well, I suppose, to be doing that if we can get the vehicle for it. And I think SailGP is great, personally. As I say, you love it or you hate it, but it's certainly getting eyeballs now, and it's certainly creating a noise. If you believe the numbers that they were touting last week, 1.6 million viewers on CBS, I think it was, which is great depending what you make the numbers do. But marvellous, good luck to them. I really hope it works well, and I thoroughly enjoyed being involved in it for that period of time.
They are learning though. The athletes in the SailGP in particular, I think we were in Dubai and commenting on how far everybody has come. I mean, I've been sticking a microphone in front of Tom Slingsby's face since I started my media business, but I also was on the Australian sailing team with him, and they never wanted to talk to anybody. Come Dubai, there's a press conference, and there's a question from the audience on social media, which is, what's something that they don't know about you, Tom? And he said, well, actually, we're friends with Pete Burling, to which Phil Robertson said, no, you're not. And, the room erupted in laughter. So they're getting that character, and they're starting to do it. But, I mean, it was actually a race between Nathan Outteridge and Tom Slingsby during the 2012 London Olympics. That's when they went on social media and they had a race to see who would have the most followers at the end of that Olympics. And so that's when they first started engaging. So it's come a long way in terms of them wanting to promote themselves, but literally a lot of us pleading with them, please let me help you help the sport, because we really do need them to be putting themselves out there and be real and raw and accessible, because 90% of our sport, or more than, is not them. It's normal people, like with Francesca's throughout.
Emily?
I'd like to say something controversial in a room full of sailors while we're talking about SailGP. Title of this presentation, I think, is new comms, isn't it? I can't quite remember what the new comms tools are. And actually, do you know, from me, you're not going to get an insight on whether we should be on TikTok or Clubhouse, or we should all be doing B-reels. I think SailGP have got the best comms tool there, and they turn knots to kilometres. Now, please don't throw tomatoes at me for this, and I'm sorry for saying it, but suddenly you've opened up sailing to a whole new audience. I'm not a sailor. I can understand kilometres an hour because I know in my car, if I'm going 100 kilometres an hour, I'm going fast, and I can understand, so that's a boat going quite fast, and imagine doing that on a boat. If you talk to me in knots, I don't really get it. I have to get my calculator out, and I really do. When I'm writing press releases on this, I have a unit to convert it. So I think that's one of the cleverest
That was quite controversial at the time when we were deciding it.
Let's see support for the room for kilometres with Emily. Who supports kilometres? And who supports knots?
I think the thing is, it doesn't feel normal to us, Andy. I prefer knots, but again, my mum's a non-sailor, my other half who's in the room is a non-sailor. They've become addicted to SailGP as people who've never really gotten attached to the sport until SailGP. So that's made them then want to go and look at other aspects of the sport. And if that can happen outside of this pool that we have, yes, 51,000 followers for Pete Burling, but we're pulling from a much smaller pool than F1 to start with. But if we can expand that entire pool and make it more accessible, then and easier to understand, then we'll have a much bigger audience.
I agree with you, Emily. It's been a hard shift for me, but I'm gradually coming around to kilometres. And we come from the UK, so that's pretty difficult for us, actually. So we struggle in the first place, but in fact, after Brexit, I don't think we even allowed kilometres anymore. So that's one example of how Russell Coots and Sal GP are steering towards a new audience. Richard, is there a danger of alienating the traditional audience? Does that even matter?
Does it matter? I mean, that's a controversial one. Is there a danger of alienating it? I think the benefit of opening up to a new market outweighs the potential of alienation. I think the simplification of some of the things like knots to kilometres an hour is a really good start point, in my view. I don't think it will alienate traditionalists. I mean, I love the augmented reality that goes with Sail GP. I love the fact that we've stripped out some of the barriers that we've had as a sport for years and years and years, and you can see on the screen, you can see the racetrack, you can see the marks, you've got digital overlay on it. So all of these have got to be good. We've got to embrace them. Yeah, there's a rule for the traditional piece as well. But look, Netflix have got Race of Champions. So that's reflecting back on the traditional side of where the sport's been. That's great. They're harmonious. They go together. And I think that's one of the key points. Back to your question about which takes preference, which is more important, the new media or the traditional media. It has to be a blended approach. There's something in it for everyone.
And thinking about
that, but that doesn't mean exclude the new. You've got to go for the new as well. And sometimes as a sport we struggle to adopt the new early enough and vigorously enough.
Well, isn't that because you could chase the next big thing and find that it's not? You could go down a lot of blind alleys. So TikTok looks like it's exploding, but how did we know that when TikTok first came along? I mean, that's a...
You take reference from other areas. In the presentation that I did yesterday, we looked at other areas and you see where the growth trends are and you put a few of your eggs in that basket, perhaps not all of them, but you play a little bit in that world without excluding your heartland, but you just take some steps. And perhaps as a sport we haven't taken those steps early enough and adopted new areas early enough. From a direction of travel, have we adopted influencers as an example of getting new voices into the sport? We've seen it with certain clients that we've worked with, where you'll take an influencer into a new area and it generates an explosion of newness. And I think some of that newness is really, really important. It doesn't mean we're excluding tradition, it means we're just seeking newness as well.
May I answer to this? We had a big experiment, a huge experiment this year in Barcolana. So you see some picture of our race that I hope someone of you knows, I think so. And we had a big experiment of this year because we made a partnership. Barcolana made a partnership with a very big company in Italy that manage influencers. So working for the Gen Z and Alpha, more Z than Alpha because Alpha is too young for us, for Barcolana. We had 20 influencers that didn't know anything about sailing. It was just a way to put Gen Z near Barcolana as a festival, as a show, as something different. It was an awareness experiment. We had 20, I have some numbers that maybe can help. In 10 days, they made 350 videos on TikTok and Instagram. And then they made some other videos for the website. And we have 23 million visualization in 1 week, which is a very big number. What we can say about this number? By one side, was very good because the awareness of Barcolana in Gen Z was not so high, like in the other gen, let's say, and it improved a lot. In Italy, if you say Barcolana, the 55% of the whole population knows what is it and where is it and when it has been, like every year at October. What happened in the, let's say, different way that we didn't expect it, that the dialogue, the chat between our public, the sailing public, didn't increase, but go slower. So this video, which some sailors said was a little wild because it was not technical, not speaking about knots, not about kilometers. They would say, oh, the boats are going, something like that. It was just connecting sailing with something very nice to do, very familiar, something that you can easily approach, something different that you can do in an environment, in a sustainable way, like a woman, like a man, every age and so on. This was very good for the general public, but what happened is that our public be silent, more silent, not so wanting to share with them their experience. So this is something that I think we have to think, because in the blend, as you said, you need to have something for the general public and something for the technical public. You can't use the same media, the same channels, the same touch point for these two different public, because it does. In our experience, it didn't work.
I think that's so spot on, because people consume media in different ways. So you're always going to need to, present it to them in different ways. Young people are communicating via their phones. They want media that's not overproduced, and in a way, that's also something that could be a solution for our sport, where it is expensive to cover it traditionally in terms of broadcast. Not saying that there isn't a place for broadcast, but it's that old school marketing, message for medium criteria that you just need to go forward with. But it also gives us an opportunity for alternate and diversified voices through different meanings, which is something that is a pattern and a trend outside of marketing that needs to come across our sport, because without more female voices, more voices of colour, then how do we inspire those people to come through at a participation base if they're not being represented, as a personality in the media as well? So showing people that you're having fun in a very simple way. My most viewed video of last year, which is something like 2.4 million views, was a behind-the-scenes snippet of me driving a rib between two boats while commentating, and a big wave that just came off the bow at the wrong angle off this Benetto came over the top of the whole media boat, and we just all went, and it went viral. So it doesn't have to be overproduced, and it was in portrait on Instagram, and that made people go, what are you doing? What's that boat? What is this? And it made them ask questions, and that expands the sport.
Richard.
Sorry.
Sorry, but I'm going to go to Richard. We've talked about the fragmentation of the sport, how we need more economies of scale. That's always been the case. I would suggest that since the internet and the rise of social media, we've now got a new problem of fragmentation. There used to be a more cohesive way of reaching an audience through traditional media, but now with the democratization of media, it's very, very scattered. So how do we get a cohesive message out?
So I think that, yes, the media platforms is broad, there's lots of them, but what we need to focus on is don't fragment the message. Make the content simple to understand, compelling, engaging, and relevant to the particular platforms you want to communicate on. So yes, the media landscape is fragmented, but again, that's an opportunity, not a problem. But let's get our message super, super clear, from top down, from World Sailing down through each of the promoter-owned events. Simple messaging that is delivered in an engaging, creative and compelling manner on whatever the right platform is for the people you want to talk to.
As you say that, I think of #BackTheBid, Emily. So tell us about the strategy for that.
Well, when we were brought in, I think it was in April last year, April 2021, when World Sailing approached us to us for ideas and support around the campaign. And we realised we needed to come up with something very simple that would unite everybody. It was easy to understand, and #BackTheBid just worked, and that really became the sort of the pin of everything that we did. From the bottom, everything was about backing the bid. So we've run a global campaign. We've picked off, there are 14 IPC members who are going to be making the decision. So there's 14 countries that we need to target, plus another 4 countries on top. China, I think Brazil's another one as well, so it's about 16 territories. We've gone around the world to identify athletes to work with, disabled athletes, and their stories are hugely inspiring. There are people who are born with disabilities, there are other people that have had horrific accidents. We then created relationships with different sailing events. SailGP in particular have been very supportive, and the Swiss SailGP team as well. They're sailing with Back the Bid on their boat as part of their Impact and Purpose campaign. And then we've taken Back the Bid into the race villages. We've had hundreds of thousands of people seeing the Back the Bid collateral within the race village. These are people who don't know anything about our sport, who are meeting the athletes and really backing it. And along with the activity that World Sailing are doing, for example, the Paralympic Development Programme, the PDPs, we've been proactively taking journalists along to come and see the work that World Sailing is doing to really drive home this message that and it's not just a message, this activity that World Sailing are doing, which is they're really investing in it. You know, it is part of our sport, that there is people with disabled people who are part of our sport, and they're all athletes, and we're all on one platform together, we're all one sport together. And the support from the media has been great as well. The inspiring stories. We've just seen there's a Chinese parasailer who's just been taking part in the Route de Rome. There's Daniel Seguin as well. Unfortunately, his Route de Rome finished early. But telling these stories in all of the different media and then social media as well. So I really ask everybody here, you are vitally important to this campaign as well. Please be sharing the stories on your channels. Go meet the athletes within your territories as well. Tell their stories yourself. And by this groundswell, we hope, and we've heard that the IPC are noticing the coverage. There's 23 sports we're up against, and we track them all, and we're getting the most amount of media coverage. But it's not just about media coverage, of course. It's about what World Sailing are doing and the investment.
Emily, thank you. We've got a few minutes for questions. I see we've got some questions up there which we'll address as well. Anyone want to ask a question? Yeah, okay. And while I walk over to Knut, I just want to address prediction regen alpha. Are they more likely to relate to winners, digital format, speed, etc., to athletes who share their struggles, personal insecurities, challenges with mental health? Cliff, you've been a bit quiet so far, so I'm going to put that one to you.
I think, yeah, absolutely. It's all of that, isn't it? Or any of those, whichever's going to make the most interest, I suppose. I mean, what would you guys say? I mean, winners, digital formats, I mean, goodness me. It's a very broad question, that, but I think we can all relate to struggles and personal insecurities and so on, but it's still about telling stories at the end of the day.
I think the first one's that's about being human, isn't it? We all win, even if I'm not an athlete. I win with my kids at home. I win because sometimes I manage to clean my house before I go to work. But also I have struggles and personal struggles, and it's telling that human story. That's what we can relate to. These real pinnacle athletes that don't let anybody in. These sort of godlike athletes, they're very inaccessible, and I think it's making yourself inaccessible. Accessible, sorry.
I'm completely with you, Emily, on that. I don't think the speed of the boat is important at all. It's the gladiatorial battle between human beings that are on the boat that's the really interesting bit. You overlay that with the Paralympic issues, and that then becomes a human-first series of stories that can play out in any media, and that's really exciting for me. It's not whether it's knots or kilometres an hour. I think that using simple language is really, really important. Language that people understand, but the really important bit is human-first stories.
And look at Drive to Survive. I mean, how much of the racing is in there?
Yes.
10-15%? Did you see the racing?
Yeah, and I think it's spot on. And yes, you still want to see the winners, and we still want to be inspired, but that battle to get to the start line almost is just as difficult, and knowing how hard it is in our sport to get there. I mean, the Tokyo 2020 Olympics held in 2021 was incredibly inspiring because it was so hard just to get there, and then it was this big message of hope as well that the world might go back to normal. So those stories of all those athletes who had to be locked down away from their families, and they were doing that through their own social media platforms as well, was incredibly inspiring across a range of sports. And I think that's definitely something that we need to learn. The inspiring messages are not necessarily the ones where you finish across the line first.
Nick, thank you. Now, Caroe, what's your question?
Yeah, it's more of a challenge, I think, to the team. I think it's a bit ironic that we talk about sailors and personalities, and every photo we show on the screen is about the boat. and I think that's quite symptomatic of the industry, that we love our boats, and we love the photos of the boats. But I'd like to challenge you guys a little bit, because in my job today, we are spending quite a lot of money sponsoring sailors. And we track the Google Trends, which I think we should do here. I think we should show on Google Trends who has the most followers in sailing, and you'll be surprised. Boris Herman has more than twice as many followers on any social media as any of the America's Cup skippers.
Yeah.
And the majority of those followers are in Germany. For us, he's an amazing personality in Germany. It works, so it can be done. Alex Thompson sadly left sailing. Take a look at his numbers that he still has today. Significant, 4 times as many as Pete Burling. It is possible to do. The biggest social media hit in sailing has been for the last 6 years, Vagabond, which is an Australian couple who sails around on a catamaran. They have 1.8 million subscribers to YouTube. If you're a subscriber to YouTube, you're an active person who actively follows content, and you choose to get it into your feed every day. So it can be done. And I think it should be, if we can highlight more the success stories, because the rest of sailors who wants to make it should learn from Boris Herman. Boris Herman has one of the best commercial setups in sailing today, partly driven by himself building a personality in Germany, which means he is today recognized in Germany. You can ask a lot of German customers we have who buy cruising boats, they all know about Boris Herman. That has happened over very few years, but he's just, so the opportunity there is there. I think we are fighting a little bit the wrong chicken here, because some of these guys are never going to get vocal.
Yeah.
You can work as hard as you want, but Pete Burling, he's never going to do what Boris is doing, ever. And I think there are many other sports where the most famous athletes are not necessarily the best, but they help drive the sport. So I just want to challenge you on that you don't have to go after number one.
What is it that Boris does so well that has engaged you?
Well, he shares a lot. He's actively posting on Instagram to start with.
But it must be more than that. He's obviously getting his humanity across. That's what I'm guessing.
Well, he addresses a focused audience who speak German, 2 Germans, as to start with. So he addresses his local audience and he builds his audience in Germany. But he shares a very personal story, and it talks less about sailing. I think it talks more about his personal challenge. But it really works. It really works really, really well. And he's growing very fast as well. So I just want to challenge you on that we don't have to go after the best. We don't have to go after the CTP guys are great, but there could be other people who can help us build the industry.
I think we're in total agreement. It's not necessarily the first person over the finish line.
No.
It's the person that is the most engaging. And it is, we talked about heroes and villains. It's people have a role to play. Some sailors are natural introverts, and you're not going to get them to be vocal. Perhaps Phil Robertson is one where we would back, and we saw that play out in Dubai a little bit. Look, I'm not necessarily advocating swearing in the media, but it's created buzz, and that's a good thing.
I think the other thing that Boris does, obviously, he was a solo sailor with the Vendée, and so he had to film, and that was the good discipline. Perhaps we should be sending all of these, we sent Pete Burling off around the world, maybe that'll teach him the lesson on how to communicate, but that's really important. These solo sailors are trained to do that, to get their brand message out, to get their sponsor's message out. There's no one else on board who's going to pick up the camera for them. They have to do it themselves. And look, we saw Boris doing that 30 minutes after he was he hit the fishing boat just as he closed into the finish line, and the Vendée, he got his camera out and said what happened.
And there was a massive uproar online. I think everybody was watching and feeling that with him, and he was devastated, and we all lived that era.
So we know the ingredients, we know what we're looking for, we just got to find more of them or make more of them. And talking about Pete Burling, I would say that Ben Ainsley used to be like Pete Burling, and he's dragged himself through a process of of evolution where he's stepped up to the challenge.
I mean, look, if anyone's listened to his and Georgie's podcast, Performance People, the Jeremy Clarkson and Kaylee episode is just genius. Yeah, it's absolutely genius. So yeah, I mean, Ben is what I would call slightly introverted, but he's managed to punch his way out of that a little bit as without doubt doing some great stuff.
Well, we know what we're looking for. I come back to this consistency of being able to deliver a consistent message. I think this is what we're lacking. This is what we need to try and find. And I wonder if we can work with World Sailing to help build those consistent heroes across. I mean,
and I'm just going to say a bit more diversification too, because all we've spoken about is basically male heroes as well. So we need to do better there and help with.
Well, I don't necessarily think that's true, because what we're hearing from SailGP and America's Cup is that they are driving towards more inclusivity. So I'm not sure that's necessarily true.
I mean, in terms of heroes, to help, we need to help give those women a voice and lift them up, because the guys have a head start, honestly. So, I mean, we need to go and follow Hannah Mills, and we need to go and follow Pip Hare, and we need to go and follow those women and help give them their platform too.
Well, absolutely. And I just wonder what Ellen MacArthur might have achieved if she was going around the Vendée Globe now. I mean, she was almost ahead of her time with social media back in 2000. I also want to address, maybe we'll talk more about this a little bit later on. I think one of the roadblocks we've got is the personality clash that we've got at the top of America's Cup and SailGP. How are we going to actually be able to have these consistent heroes when we've got egos that refuse to communicate with each other? And from what I understand, if you sail for Alinghi as part of the Swiss team, the America's Cup, you are banned from racing on SailGP. So we've got some big problems at the top of the sport with people holding a lot of money, the purse strings. They're holding us back. I mean, they're doing an awful lot. Let's not take away what they're doing, but we could be doing more if we can have these heroes moving from one part of the sport to another. Anyway, we are out of time. I will take one more question if anyone. Okay. Conrad, sorry, I'm going to walk right past you because at least you're going to be up on stage later on, so sorry about that.
Thank you. I just wanted to elaborate a little bit more about this. I mean, we've been running after Ronaldo's statistics for about 10 years, and we are not getting there. And foiling is only as exciting to a 12-year-old until they realize a bicycle can go faster. So, but we have something. I mean, look at rugby. Rugby is not going after soccer. They're taking something different, which is their culture. And we are mastering here technology. That is what all those kids are fighting for. We've seen container ships now hoisting sails, and container ships looking at foiling. And so shouldn't we take the lead technologically to attract those kids instead? I mean
Anyone on the panel like to address that point?
Well, I think technology is obviously, you've been talking about it already with SailGP in the Cup. You know, they're looking at the graphics, for example. And you mentioned esports yesterday, which is very interesting. Doing a lot in that area. Virtual sailing, what happened to virtual sailing? That seems to have disappeared off the radar slightly since lockdown finished. But I think the technology, the problem we've got with technology is getting people aware of it. Same old problem. How do you, my kids, for example, you know, my son's a sailor, he enjoys sailing. He loves watching SailGP and the America's Cup when it was on, because they look how fast they're going. We were talking about speed earlier. That's still, you know, it gets people's interest. And then you can hopefully get them onto the personalities that we were talking about. But I think technology is certainly there. How can we develop it more? That's, you know, and get it into the media. That's part of the issue, I suppose, that we're talking about. So.
And on Emily's point, and she was pointing out kilometres versus knots, and there's a lot of pushback there. There was initially a lot of pushback on foiling as well. Everyone wanted their J boats, and their, you know, and there is still a place for the World Match Racing Tour that's not foiling. But you know, moving forward and not being afraid of the change and the development is really important for our sport.
We are out of time. Thank you so much to our panel. I really enjoyed that session. So thanks very much to all of you. Let's give them a round of applause.